Welcome to I Wish You Could Hear This, where we explore great stories and simple proven steps to help you thrive in life, faith, and relationships.
In our research, we've heard hundreds of hope-filled strategies for marriage, parenting, leadership, and life that are grounded in science and consistent with biblical truth. And now you can hear them too.
I'm Shaunti Feldhahn.
And I'm Jeff Feldhahn.
Parents, we all know the feeling of wanting to help our kids and protect them from heartache. Like if you have kids at home, how many times have you woken them up in the morning when they slept through their alarm so they wouldn't get another tardy slip at school? Or maybe you brought their sports equipment bag to school because they forgot it again. But we also probably know that this type of snowplow parenting may not be the best thing for them. If you have ever wondered how to navigate this and whether to allow your kids to experience the consequences of their mistakes while also supporting them through it, then this episode of I Wish You Could Hear This is for you.
I'm really excited to get talking about this because I think lots of other parents can learn a few things.
About how not to snowplow parent?
Yeah. I mean,
because of course not for
us.
Not for us.
Of course not.
Of course not. Well, you're being very kind because I know that I'm going to be the one that has to own this because that has been much more my thing than it has been yours.
You did it because you love them.
Absolutely. So
to get everyone on the same page, what is snowplow parenting?
Okay, yes. So it's where you act like a snowplow and you're kind of going ahead of your kids to remove the obstacles in their path so they don't get hurt. It's preventing problems. So like a snowplow pushes the snow out of the way so you don't get stuck, right?
Okay.
So like, for example, in one of our interviews, one mom that I was talking to, her thing was she had a son who was new on the high school football team. I think he was a freshman. And the coach had made it really clear that if a student forgot a certain type of equipment for practice, and I can't remember what the equipment was, but if you forgot it, you were going to be benched for the actual Friday night game. And her son was young. He was 14. He was sort of a forgetful type. And, you know, she didn't want him to miss a game. So, of course, whenever he left his bag at home, she would just pick it up and bring it by the school. So that is an example of you're trying to prevent a problem.
So how is this different from helicopter parenting?
Okay, so similar idea. Both of these are trying to like overly help your kids probably. Rescuing, etc. Helicopter parenting is more about the constant hovering and managing and swooping in and rescuing a kid once a problem arises. So snowplow parenting is like preventing the child from hitting the problem to begin with. So that mom, for example, is preventing the child from getting benched. A helicopter parent would be more likely to swoop in after the coach says, hey, you're going to be benched. And they may ask for a meeting with the coach to talk them out of it. But the idea is similar. They're very similar parenting strategies.
Got it. So in this, we're going to be mostly going to be talking to parents with kids who are at home.
Yes.
Who aren't yet adults.
Correct.
I think it would be helpful to take a minute, though, and fast forward a few years and share what could be the natural consequence of snowplow parenting.
Like what happens a few years down the road.
Yeah, and it's been researched. So researchers have seen some trends in slightly older kids. Let's call them the emerging adult children, ages 18 to the mid-20s.
Okay.
So there was this New York Times poll in 2019 that found that 3/4 of parents in the poll made appointments like doctor's visits or haircuts for their adult children.
Okay, so everybody who is not watching this on YouTube need to know that Jeff looked sideways at me when he said doctor's visits.
I had a crick in my neck.
You had a crick in your neck. Listen, I will acknowledge that I am/was so guilty of this. So last year, when I was writing a blog on snowplow parenting, which ended up like being picked up like by the Today Show and everything, because this is such a common issue for so many of us as parents. But when I was writing that snowplow blog, I realized I looked at that New York Times poll and I went, oh, because, Luke, our son, he has epilepsy, and I have been and still was the main contact for the neurologist. It was my email in there, my phone number when he needed a new appointment. I'm like, oh, he's in college. He's really busy. I'll just make the appointment for him. And realizing, okay, yeah, this is ridiculous. He was 22 years old. I should probably let him figure out how to do that.
Okay, I'm going to just say something in defense of you and of moms out there. Now,
all right.
I
Thank you.
might have had a difference of opinion with you as he grew older. I could
On many things.
Yes, so let's say this: the neurologist appointments, all of that. The fact of the matter is, I could have, from the very beginning, been the main source of contact for the neurologist. I was all too happy to have you kind of carry that one during those early years. And I think there's a lot of dads out there who are all too happy to let their wives, the moms, carry some of these things.
Okay.
And then roll your eyes internally and go, I do it this way. You actually didn't. You had the chance, and you were okay.
I like you.
So as I'm hearing you say this, and I'm just thinking that I need to step up on that one.
Okay. Well, thank you. I know all the moms out there appreciate it, and hopefully the dads also recognize this. Okay.
So
thank you.
Yeah. So let's look at another poll of parents who had adult children age 18 to 34.
So even older. 34.
Yeah. Pew Research found that 59% of parents gave financial help in the last year. And 36% of those parents said doing so hurt their own personal financial situation, at least somewhat.
So, yeah, also guilty. But I think that's a little bit different. But it is, the financial thing is there. One of the top things that the Pew poll found was that parents were mostly paying for things like cell phone bills and streaming services. Again, guilty. Our daughter is still on our cell phone plan. Now,
economically, it makes sense.
It kind of makes sense. It's cheaper for her. And now, to be fair, she keeps offering to pay us for it. But I can see how that ends up just continuing for many families. But the problem is it all adds up over time to snowplow parenting.
So the issue appears to be that snowplow parenting, when the kids are younger, tends to lead to kids who are dependent on us when they're older. Am I getting that correct?
Yes. So that's what we're going to be. That's why I wanted to do a podcast on this, to kind of tackle this a little bit.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good.
So in the younger years, we can think about how we have a tendency towards this.
So let's go back to some of that earlier research, younger years.
Okay.
So based on your research in For Parents Only, you came up with several things that might help parents to know about their kids, to help stop the snowplow parenting trend, maybe? And could you just give a quick overview of that research?
Yeah, absolutely. You mean like what we did?
Yeah.
Like how we researched it? So
what you found?
Over the course of, oh my gosh, you're going to have to help me remember this. It was like 5 years, maybe, over 5 years. We did three
books,
big books and big surveys of teenagers. And so in the end, it ended up being interviews and surveys with more than 3,000 teenagers and tweens. Mm-hmm. And we learned a lot about how they think that is really, really relevant for this snowplow parenting conversation, how they think about parents and what they do and what they don't do and all that kind of stuff. And you should know, we were you remember when we were doing this with our friends Eric and Lisa Rice, and Lisa and I would take, paper surveys, just short, just a few questions, and go to a food court in a mall on a Friday night or Saturday night. Mm-hmm. And say, hey,
back when kids all hung out in malls.
Yes. There would be a lot of different places. Or we would go to arcades. We would, and basically say, hey, I don't want to know your name. I don't want to know anything about you. Here's a $5 Starbucks gift card. If you'd be willing to fill this out and just answer a few questions, share your heart for this research project. So.
And this was all you then do the surveys.
Then we do the national surveys after.
The scientifically designed.
Right, after that point.
Okay.
Yeah. So we found, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 things, truths that are probably relevant to this snowplow thing. So the first thing, just briefly, the first is not going to be a surprise because it's really obvious that the kids actually want to get to that point of being completely independent, right? Like it's like a young horse. It's like a colt. It's like trying to run free, trying to get away from any constraints. But that truth also means if they are going to get to that independence, we have to let them solve their own problems, right? If we solve the problem ahead of time, they're never going to learn how to be independent in a, any kind of meaningful way. There is an old saying that I love, which is the job of the parent is to prepare the child for the road instead of preparing the road for the child.
Wow.
And so that is like basically the teens in the For Parents Only research, they were so motivated by freedom. They were eager to jump onto that maybe difficult road, even if they weren't always able to handle it perfectly.
Or entirely confident.
Well, they were often overconfident about their ability to handle it. But either way, by definition, that means that they need to be able to do things without us. So there's going to be bumps and bruises. And so the key is how do we help them navigate those bumps without clearing them out ahead of time?
Does this vary between boys and girls?
Yeah, actually it did a bit. I mean, everybody wanted independence. But for those of us who are the moms of boys, we found in the research we have to be especially attuned to this because teenage boys especially have this particularly strong need to feel trusted to solve their own problems.
I get it.
Yeah, I mean,
I get it.
This obviously matters to girls too, of course, but you get it as a
guy.
former teenage guy.
Yeah, and as a grown-up guy, you still want to feel like you can figure these things out.
Well, and so we basically, what we found is that is in there, even in the teenage boys. Obviously, they want to feel significant. They want to feel competent, like somebody looks up to them. And so let's just say if, your son is being bullied at school, if you as a mom or a dad rush in to try to solve the problem in handling a bully, he's not going to feel, oh, thank you so much. He may actually feel powerless. And you may see like a sullen attitude, a withdrawn attitude because he's feeling incapable. Now, obviously you don't let like dangerous situations keep going. But I can remember a few times that you were like, let Luke handle it on his own. If there were some guys who were being obnoxious to him, I can remember you saying he needs to, at least at the beginning, let him figure it out.
Right. There's a story that we tell that probably is not, this is not parenting advice 101, but it is one of the things in our
I have
family.
no idea what you're going to say.
Do you remember when he was being bullied at the camp?
No.
And he was the summer camp, and he, was just really, he became sullen and
withdrawn.
And I wasn't there because he was out of state. He was up at your folks.
Yep.
And, he called and you'd told me about it, and I got him on the phone. And I said to him, look, buddy, I've heard about the kid who's been, kind of
and it was,
teasing you.
He was obnoxious.
Yeah. And so I said, I just want you to know, you have my permission.
Because he was pushing
if he pushes you to be able to defend yourself, and if you have to hit him with everything you've got. Because you're going to get in trouble whether you hit him soft or hit him hard. So give it your best shot. And again, I'm not advocating violence between kids, but you told me that next day he walked out to the camp, whereas before he didn't want to go.
Yeah.
He went with a bit more of a kind of a bounce in his step. And then he told you that the kid had called him or did something that I don't know,
very inappropriate,
teased him or whatever. And he forcefully said, "Stop it," and looked him in the eye. And from that point on, they became good buddies, and they were hung out all the rest of the summer.
Boys.
But and he didn't need to hit him. So
So we didn't have to go through that.
Once he felt that he had permission to kind of stand
Hand it
up,
on his own.
Yep.
Handle it on
and
his
that
own.
he wouldn't be punished necessarily.
Yeah, I mean I had totally forgotten about that story.
Yeah, that's not one that we write down in the books. But here's the advice that you should do.
Definitely.
It's one that worked in our case, but
well, he didn't end up having to do
didn't have
that.
to.
He just stood up to
he had
it.
permission to.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing. I think we often don't realize how important that is.
Right.
Okay, so
Let's
go
go
into the next one.
Okay,
Yeah.
truth too. So we have to let our kids make mistakes, but let's do it when the stakes are low.
Yeah.
So none of us wants to see our kids get a 0 on a late assignment or get a speeding ticket. But if the grade is bad, or if they have to pay the fine and then the car insurance spike because of that speeding ticket, it could build their resilience muscles. So a little bit of pain when the stakes are low helps them learn and grow. In fact, if you think about it, there is no way to build those muscles other than using them.
Yeah, that's okay. So now here's where it starts getting right. Like I know that you have to use the muscles in order try this in order to build that sense that I can do it. And that's really key, because if you don't get a chance to fail and figure it out and maybe try it again, you're not going to build a sense of confidence that you can handle things. Like in the buzz speak of the day, the kids aren't building a sense of agency, right? Like they kind of feel like they're at the mercy of whatever happens in the world. And it's kind of confusing. Actually, researchers have looked at this. This is pretty, when I think of myself as, again, guilty of having been some snowplow parenting for many years, the researchers have looked at the consequence of this and found that those kids who have been snowplow parented, they're more likely to give up more easily. And they they have poor problem solving skills because they never developed them to begin with. And even I did a whole blog a couple of years ago on learned helplessness. Like there's this sort of feeling of, look, I'm not even going to try. And so they don't, a lot of times the kids don't even get to the point where they fail because they don't even try to begin with. So all of those things are kind of another natural consequence of snowplow parenting.
So what we're saying is that if we're going to get them to try and be okay with failure, we have to make sure that they know it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
I recently heard of a family that has something called a Mistake Monday routine. So at dinner time, they talk about the mistakes they made the previous week. They remind each other by doing that it's okay to fail, and they emphasize having grace with themselves and with each other. I like that a lot.
I really like that a lot. I mean, especially because the kids are hearing the parents talk about their mistakes too.
Sure.
So truth number 3. Next, so those are the two truths about kind of the consequences. The kids want to be independent, but there are consequences if they don't learn how to problem solve.
Okay.
Truth number 3 is a jog over to the side a little bit, where this is more for us to think about one of the reasons why we snowplow parent. And it's something that a lot of us probably may not have grappled with, that this is a real thing. We may have to come to grips that one of the reasons that we do these things for our kids is because it's quicker for us. It's more efficient for us. Because, parenting, it can be annoying. And this is so me, so me. If I am in a hurry, which I often am because I'm overscheduled, and this is back, when the kids were little, they were overscheduled like all of us were. It is easier just to remove the potential problem from our child's path so it doesn't slow us down. Right. It is quicker. I can remember how many times you and Luke, or I think this happened a few times with Morgan, but this was probably more a Luke thing, where you guys, maybe you and he would work on like a science project or something, and then he would leave his binder at home, like it drove me nuts. It was way quicker for me just to like, I'm just going to drive it down to the school, the binder down to the school, rather than, okay, hey.
Let him get there and find out what he did.
And then have the school ask for, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Feldhahn, can we have a parent-teacher conference about how he needs to be more organized? Like, it's just so much quicker to remove the obstacle for my sake, which is not good for him. It's kind of the same thing. I mean, it sounds silly, but it's kind of the same thing of when our kids were little. I mean, we knew it was going to take extra time for them to learn to tie their own shoelaces. But we knew they had to learn how to tie their own shoelaces. Like, so we allowed the extra 10 minutes and forced ourselves to just wait while they fumbled it with it, because we knew they had to learn how to do it. And it's the same thing. For them to learn how to do the equivalent of that as an older kid is going to be better for them in the end. But it means we need to add in more margin.
Though I will say that the opportunities I have of tying my shoelaces these days really aren't that many. I just slip into shoes nowadays.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So truth number 4 of all of these, this is sort of the big one. Here is basically what we saw in the research of the teens and tweens and what they're thinking and what they want from us and what the research has found. Instead of snowplowing in front of them, we have to walk parallel to them, like on a parallel road. They have to be on their own road. And there's going to be obstacles in their path, and us on our parallel road, we can say, hey, honey, I see this obstacle in your way. But if they trip over it anyway, if maybe they don't listen, or maybe they didn't understand, or whatever it was, they're going to trip over things that we saw coming and that they dismissed. For example, this means we need to do things like avoiding the urge to wake our kid up for school every morning in time, and because they're going to get detention if they're late again. Like, it's way better, if we think about it, for them to learn that lesson about being late for school rather than being late for a job interview, right? I mean, when the stakes are low.
Yeah, no, I get that.
This is, for me, this is one that I should have been better with my kids, with our kids. Because of what my dad did. Do you remember me telling you the story of what my dad did with my alarm clock?
Oh yeah, tell that story.
Okay.
Yeah, tell it.
So this was like, I was horrible as a teenager. I was horrible about sleeping in, hitting the snooze over and over. This is back in the day when you had an actual alarm clock instead of a phone. And so I would hit the snooze. And my mom, my sweet mom, who will do anything for us, she was a stay-at-home mom. And by the time we were teenagers, I think she was already a nurse, so she was busy. But still, she was just awesome, and she would do anything for us. And that included, if I'd hit the snooze one too many times, she would drive us to school because we were going to be late. And so at one point, and my dad often traveled internationally, so he wasn't home. And at one point, he had been gone, because he was often gone, for, a month or more at a time. It maybe that particular month had gotten particularly bad. And he comes home and he's like, she is sleeping in again. And why are you driving her to school? And, whatever. So the next morning, I can still remember this plain as day. I must have been in REM sleep because I was so disoriented. The alarm rang and I reached over kind of subconsciously to hit it, and it wasn't there. And the noise was so loud because he had turned up the volume, and it was ringing so loudly, and I was so disoriented, and I'm like sitting up in bed going, what, huh? And he had snuck into my room in the middle of the night and put the alarm clock across the room. And
done, Dad. Well done, Dad.
Turned the volume so far up. in order to like make the point of you need to be doing this yourself. This isn't something that it should be your mom's responsibility. You know, this is your job. So anyway, but at that point, from that point, I did it from that point on.
Right.
I had the alarm across the room. I was never late to school again.
Okay.
So yeah.
Lesson learned. So I get what we're saying here, but what if the kid hasn't quite figured out how to navigate an intimidating obstacle?
Something bigger than being late for school. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of when Morgan was working a summer job, and she was scheduled for a weekend that she had really wanted to do something with a friend, and I think she had even told the manager that she needed it off.
Yeah.
And so here she was, maybe 16 years old, and she just didn't have the skills to address it with the manager on her own.
Yeah. At least we didn't think she did. I mean, for me, I was snowplow parenting. It wasn't even called that then, but it was so tempting for us to offer to go in at the end of shift with her and talk to the scheduler for her. And I was saying, I wonder if we should do that. And you were like, no. I mean, you basically said, we have to let her do it. And so you did what was way better, which is said, you know what, let's help her get the skills to be able to do this. Let's role play that conversation. Again, using the language we were just talking
smart
about.
guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. But you were basically you weren't using the terms that we're using here today, but you stayed on a parallel road. And you were there to give wisdom and like help. But she's still on her road and you don't jump on it.
And I think the thing that's important is that sometimes these things just don't work the way you want them to. And the kid may fumble and feel embarrassed and may end up even with a worse schedule if the boss is a jerk. You know, that stuff happens, but that's part of life. So in any event, it's always best to give them practice at these things when the stakes are low.
Yes. And it also gives, here's the thing that when we were talking to the kids, they recognize this as well, is it also positions them later to think, oh, I've done this before.
Right.
I know what to expect. Like, that wasn't very fun. The boss is a jerk, whatever, but I've done this before. I know what this feels like. And so they actually, again, they wanted that independence. Now, again, I'm sounding like I'm good at letting a kid do this. And I really wasn't good at letting them fumble when they were young because I wanted to prevent the heartaches. The reality, though, for any snowplow parent, if I could just speak from one to another, is to recognize we're not actually preventing the heartaches. Yeah. All I'm doing is I'm postponing the heartaches until down the road when the stakes are way higher and I'm going to be unable to help.
So here's kind of another thought. So let's say that we're walking parallel with our kid.
Okay.
And then what happens when we see the obstacle, and it's not just some small sort of obstacle, but it could become a cliff.
Something pretty significant.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's the advice to the parents kind of in that case?
Because you're not saying, if it's going to be something dangerous or something really destructive, we're not saying you should never rescue a child. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about, like, in the Bible, right, when Peter stepped out on the water, and, you know, he was being brave, right? He was trying to exercise his faith and whatever, but then once he actually began to fall, Jesus, it said, lifted him back up.
Like, I think it says, the word immediately, I think is there.
And so that leads to something else that, okay, so I think it's our last truth for today. I think we're going to be out of time here. And this is a big deal. We saw this in the interviews so strongly with the teenagers. When the kids make the mistakes, because they're going to make the mistakes, right? We need to reassure them of our love and support. Like when the big thing happens, when the cliff is there, when there's the real big issue, they need far more than what they need is our oh so efficient snowplowing skills. They need our absolute unconditional love and support. That doesn't mean our approval. You know, it doesn't mean that they did everything right, because they won't have by definition in this situation. But they need to know that we are going to support them and we love them through everything. This was one of the most serious, significant things we found in the surveys and the interviews is just how easily kids don't feel supported when they mess up. And if they don't regularly, if they mess up and they don't feel supported in a kind of a regular fashion, it kind of leads them to close off their hearts. Like they were building walls.
So let's just
example.
say, you know, if your son didn't study enough or practice enough and he fails his driving test, it matters to say, still, I believe in you, son, without mentioning, I told you to practice more. So by telling him that you believe in him, you can restore that confidence and you know, get rid of that, you know, insecurity, that narrative that comes so readily to those kids that he's dumb. No, he's not dumb. He just realizes he didn't practice enough and he just needs to do better the next time.
Well, and he's also not dumb because he knows he didn't practice
Right.
enough, you know, like
Yeah.
it's not like you need to tell him, like
Right.
he knows you said to practice more,
Yep.
right? It's basically that starting point of I believe in you is so big. And if it's something even more serious, this is when the kids were so clear about what they needed, like emotionally from their parents. If it was even a more significant situation, that's when, if they're encountering some sort of big consequence, this is the cliff, right? This is the serious
right.
situation. That's when they needed us and wanted us to step up onto the path, take their hand and say, I am going to walk beside you through every single step here. And through
I'm not
this
going to
whole
change the
consequence.
steps that we have to go through.
But I'm going to be with you.
Right.
Because
Okay.
I love you, I believe in you, and I love you unconditionally. Let me give you an example because I think that it's helpful here. So Lisa and I, one Friday night, we were at an arcade interviewing kids. There was a group of kids that were in there from a birthday party, a group of teenagers. And we were talking to this one young man who's probably 17 years old, and he was a big kid. He looked like a football player, 6'2", just big. And he described a situation when we were talking about this concept. He had described, he's like, look, I'm not proud of it, but this had just happened, a few weeks before, where they had been at a party, and at a big party where there were drugs and alcohol that were there, and they ended up getting raided. The cops ended up coming. A bunch of people, including him, ended up getting arrested. And there was a lot that was going to come from this. There was going to have to be court visits, and his dad had to come to the jail to pick him up. And he was feeling kind of defensive, and he was feeling like a failure, right? Because this wasn't how his parents had raised him. And even though his dad was angry, he said his dad handled it in a way that changed everything. His dad came to the jail to pick him up, and he said, okay, look, he was angry. He was like, this is going to involve probably some pretty hard consequences. You're going to need to go to court. This is probably going to be on your record. You're probably going to have to do community service. There's going to be some things that come from this, but I want you to know, I love you. I believe in you, and I'm going to be here for you every step of the way. I'm going to go with you to court. I'm going to go with you. If you need to talk to whoever it is about what the community service is, I will be with you through this. This big teenage boy, this big kind of stoic looking kid, he started tearing up as he was telling us this. He's like, literally his eyes are getting red. And candidly, I started tearing up listening to him. I think Lisa was too. But that is what our teenagers need from us. Like, they are going to make mistakes. And they have to know that we're not going to rescue them. They're going to walk out those consequences. But they also need to know that we are going to be with them through all those consequences. In their way of thinking, that is what speaks unconditional love.
Wow. I mean, obviously, that's what we want from our Heavenly Father. I mean, when we mess up, and we all do, obviously I'd love him to just fix it and make it as if it didn't happen.
That's what we all want. Absolutely. Yes.
But honestly, I just knowing that he's there walking with us.
Yeah.
So I guess in the end, snowplowing obstacles out of our kids' ways just may cause them to be worried that they can't solve problems, while letting them tackle those obstacles will help them build their own confidence and resilience.
Yeah. And I think that's a good way to end. We always say, let's end with our one big thing. I think that's our one big thing, right? Like letting them tackle those things, make the mistakes, walking parallel to them, and then stepping up on the road for the big things and walking beside them is probably a pretty good starting point, even though, like I said,
it's hard.
It's hard. I didn't do this all the time. So I think one of the key takeaways is let's not be afraid of that, because that's the way God designed it. So I hope all this was helpful. To any parent with kids at home, if you are not a subscriber to our podcast, please subscribe. And if you think others would benefit, if you know other parents that are dealing with this, especially other moms who have this tendency, please share today's episode with them and tag us on all your social media channels. Thanks for listening to I Wish You Could Hear This. Remember to subscribe to our podcast. And as always, forward today's audio or video link to a friend, counselor, or pastor who would be encouraged.